Oh, hallo, ihr schon wieder. Folge 4 von Spaghetti Road, Driving from Denmark to China. Bin extrem gespannt. Im letzten Video haben die Jungs sich getrennt und sind jetzt quasi kurz vor China. Ich bin extrem gespannt, was uns erwartet und wir schauen direkt rein.
So, if you didn't watch the first 3 parts, this is a great place to start. I bought an old car with a couple of friends and decided to drive to China. Last time we had just gotten the famously hard to get Turkmen visa during our last days in Iran. A quick plug, you can subscribe if you want to help the channel. Anyway, after we got the visa, we left Iran and drove towards Turkmenistan. The route would take us past Damavand, Iran's tallest mountain, with snow on the top. As we drove through the mountains, the sun set and nighttime came, so we decided to rest for the night in Amul. We drove around the city, but Amul must be more popular than we knew because we couldn't find any hotel with rooms available. Luckily, we met Hamid, Mashid and Mustafa. They invited us to their place and we had a great dinner party with them. Hamid kindly invited us to sleep in his home. After driving with one arm out the window,
Digga, es ist so nice. Es ist so nice.
all day, I noticed it was painfully shifting to a pink color. After driving with one arm out the window all day, I noticed it was painfully shifting
What the f...
to a pink color. The next day, Hamid and Mashid wanted to show us the Caspian Sea, the world's largest lake. They didn't want to swim, so we just dipped our feet in the water. Even though it didn't look too far on the map, it still took a couple of days driving to the Turkmen border. We set up our tents right next to the border with a view of this little border town.
Nice.
When morning came, there was a lot of paperwork and small fees from the Turkmen border guards. Some fees were without a doubt legit and should of course be paid, while others seemed suspiciously made up. After some traveling, my experience is with most unjust bribe demands, patience is the best strategy. So I decided to wait it out. Well, since we were the only car crossing, the police took out a dominoes-like game and began playing. Tai was waiting at the Turkmen side of the border for me and the car. After waiting for what seemed like an eternity, I hate to admit it, but I lost this battle and paid them. Well, we were finally in Turkmenistan. And it felt awesome. We drove about 30 kilometers to the capital Ashgabat, and were only stopped by the police twice on the way. It's one of the strangest places I have ever driven. Turkmenistan is rich in natural gas, and billions of dollars went to building the showpiece capital with the world's highest concentration of white marble buildings. Driving around the completely empty streets with 3 or 4 lanes in each direction feels surreal. We rode all over the place looking at all the monuments, such as the largest indoor Ferris wheel. All look very clean and beautiful, but also somewhat artificial. It was a
Der sieht, no joke, fast aus wie Dubai.
bit sketchy without people on the road, apart from some policemen. Driving our car near the monuments in Ashgabat was not really convenient since we were stopped all the time by the police, but it was a unique experience. Compared to getting a tourist visa as most visitors would, where you have to hire a guide for a pre-planned program, we could go around independently, apart from of course dealing with a lot of police. They had given us a permissible route in advance we should follow. But, you see, Turkmenistan is famous for having a big burning hole. Back in 1971, a natural gas field collapsed and methane gas came up. So, Soviet scientists tried to burn it and intentionally set it on fire. Well, 50 years later, it's still burning continuously, so we had to diverge from the route and go and see it. As soon as we came out of Ashgabat, the roads went from the best to the worst. But driving through the desert was really awesome. We didn't see many people, but we did pass some camels. Actually, a lot of them. They were pretty abundant. We also saw a few of these lizards, which we thought were really cool, so we stopped to have a look at them. They sought refuge in the shade of our car. So, we had to get them to go away, since we of course didn't want to drive over them. Occasionally in the middle of nowhere, we of course also
Digga, komplett krank.
met a couple of corrupt policemen who wanted bribes. We were not really sure where the hole was, but having looked at Google Maps, a few different places were marked. We parked the car on the side of the road next to the first spot. It was a big hole and there was some fire and some gas bubbles emerging. To be honest, on its own it was incredibly cool, but was it the right one? It didn't look as fiery as the pictures online. This guy on a forum had posted some GPS coordinates, which we decided to try. It seemed to be around 5 kilometers away from the road, so we decided to leave the car behind, put our tents on our backs and trek through the desert. When venturing into the desert, it's important to always be prepared. I have learned from Donald Duck that you should always wear something like this on your head. Maybe for the sun or something. I take no responsibility for our strategy, but always split up and don't bring too much water. Also, vodka is available everywhere in Turkmenistan and it's unbelievably cheap, so why not bring a bottle? We headed towards the hole, crossed some train tracks. I have to disclaim the next part. Tai is an idiot. He saw the snake, and even though Tai can appear like a smart guy with his round glasses, he doesn't know much about animals in Turkmenistan, and especially absolutely nothing about snakes in Turkmenistan. Well, he wanted to take a picture of it and put his hand with his phone next to it.
Ich hasse sowas.
So it got scared and immediately jumped and tried to bite his phone. But I guess he got this nice picture. We did later learn that the snake was not venomous, but still I give him 0 out of 10 points for this stunt. We might not have taken the straightest or quickest path, but after a couple of hours we could see the fire lighting up in the
Digga.
horizon. We were thrilled that we had made it there.
What the fuck?
We took a couple of selfies next to the hole and set up our tents a short distance from the hole, since being in close proximity was very hot. This was without a doubt one of the coolest things I have ever seen. We captured this picture where, if you zoom in, I'm this little guy. The hole is also nicknamed Gates to Hell for obvious reasons. We just sat by the hole all night just talking. The next morning we headed back, crossed the train tracks again, drove back towards Ashgabat, saw some more camels, and met a bit more police. Once in Ashgabat we found a Soviet-style hotel with big empty rooms. Everywhere was nicely decorated with pictures of the president. There were of course no Wi-Fi in any of the hotels, but for entertainment there was an amazing hours-long broadcast about children singing for the president. Top-notch TV. I have been focusing on the more unusual aspects.
Digga, wie glücklich wir sein können, dass wir morgens um 9 Uhr, 10 Uhr uns selber dafür entscheiden können, anstatt des Religionsunterrichtes diesen wunderbaren Stream hier anzuschauen, anstatt die ganze Zeit irgendwelche Dokumentationen über Angie Merkel sehen zu müssen.
Aspects of the country, and I would like to say something about the people instead. Though a bit more reserved, they were friendly and kind. When we would ask for help, people would help us. Especially the ones who were not employed by the police force. Next we drove towards the city of Meru, where we were immediately stopped by the police, who, without any measurement, claimed that we had driven a lot faster than we had. When we had made an offense, I have no problem paying the fine, but when it was clearly made up accusations to extort us out of money, the best strategy was to be calm and polite, but firmly and stubbornly refuse to pay, and maybe act a bit naive. We wasted a lot of time with arguing with the police, but most of the time it worked out and we didn't have to pay anything. The next option was, we each had a small stack of international driver's licenses. They were all legal and officially obtained back in Denmark and just cost about $4. Technically it's not a driver's license, just an add-on, but the Turkmen police did accept it.
Hab ich auch. Haha, internationaler Führerschein.
So when they would ask for a driver's license and refuse to give it back before we would go and get the money, we just left it behind and immediately drove away. Finding hotels was not always easy, so we bought some cucumbers, nuts and water and just put up our tents in the desert. I had downloaded a couple of episodes of The Simpsons on my laptop, which we watched in our tents at night. The next day we continued to Turkmenabat, a quiet day where we strangely only had a single encounter with the police. This time they claimed our car was too dirty. We drove over a floating bridge to Farab. Finding a vacant hotel room was difficult again, so we stocked up on some more cucumbers and took a night more in our tents. We were a bit tired and hungry after all the driving and desert lifestyle, and we ended up having an argument. I don't really remember what it was about, but Tai told me not to drive the car into the sand since we would get stuck. I have to admit, I was an idiot and acted like a 3-year-old. On one hand I knew well he was right, but on the other hand I thought I don't want to listen to him. Anyway, we reconciled and became friends again when we had to spend the afternoon digging the car out of the burning hot sand.
Digga, sowas würde ich so hassen, Alter.
Very sorry, Tai. The next morning we entered Uzbekistan. We were very glad to be there. One of the first things we noticed was the currency, the Uzbek som, had experienced a lot of inflation. But they didn't use any large denominations, so the largest bill we saw was 1,000 som, which was about a third of a US dollar. Just to fill the tank, you had to give such a pile of bills. A lot of people just casually had one of these money counting machines, which felt sort of like being in Scarface, but it was not very practical. By the way, here they now introduce bigger bills.
RIP, Alter. Das war in Indo auch immer so. Da habe ich auch immer so Batzen Geld dabei gehabt.
This picture is, by the way, from a guy who came up to me in a restaurant and asked for a picture, and we ended up talking a lot since he wanted to practice his English. We drove to Samarkand, which should be one of Central Asia's most amazing cities, an important link of the historical Silk Road. Well, we got stuck in a completely standstill traffic jam for about 3 hours. Nobody there really knew what was going on or why the city was closed, but some people mentioned rumors of the Uzbek president coming. We later learned there was a summit going on in Uzbekistan with all the presidents of the surrounding countries, such as Russia's Putin and China's Xi Jinping. Some of them would first take an official tour to Bukhara and Samarkand, which disrupted traffic. After some more waiting, we got impatient outside the city and drove to Tashkent instead, so we'll have to go back another time. The next day we walked around. I must say, Tashkent is also the city of the future in one way.
Das muss ich sagen, da kenne ich halt keine einzige Stadt, ne? Also, Real Talk, da weiß ich überhaupt nicht, was abgeht. Null Plan.
They just planted basil in the streets. Overall, the Uzbek food we tried was quite good with a few herbs. And some very cozy settings for eating. Because of the summit, there was a lot of flags from all that.
ALR schreibt die besten Politiker der Welt in einem Raum, Kappa.
...in countries. After some very enjoyable days, we drove to Tajikistan. On the Tajik side of the border, we got into a bit of trouble for the stupid washing powder again, but nothing serious. We drove through the mountains. At more than 3 kilometers up, we began to notice the car really had a hard time moving. The road through the mountains was a bit scary, but with an incredible view. We passed the Ansop tunnel, nicknamed accordingly. Occasionally you would be reminded of the safety by abandoned trucks which had fallen off the road. We drove pretty slow ourselves, but most other cars just rushed through at high speeds. They probably had places to be. We found this spot where we tried getting a nice profile picture for Thai. Finally we made it to the capital of Dushanbe. There was a road which should be even higher and sketchier, but also even more beautiful. The Pamir Highway in the east of Tajikistan, that would also take us by the Chinese border. But we would need to apply for a permit to drive there. So we went to the guy issuing the permits and made an application. He took our papers and said we should come back tomorrow. We each walked around the city. In the center I was approached by 2 policemen. They asked me for my phone and I had a feeling they might be trying to scam me. But I was also curious how they would do it. So I gave it to them to find out. They took a picture of me with this building in the background. And one more. And one with this tower. And of course a vertical one. And one with this flag. By the way, the second tallest in the world. And naturally a vertical one with the flag. And one with the statue. And one more. And this nice one with a bit of his farm in the corner. At this point I was getting a bit annoyed. And the scam was obvious. The policeman would photograph me and later ask me for a lot of money for their services.
Digga. Mit seinem eigenen Handy. Digga. Ja. Ist witzig so ein bisschen, aber ist halt auch RIP, ne? Also die machen das nicht, weil es denen sehr gut geht, so.
I asked him to stop and he took one more. Stop. He insisted on one more and he gave me back my phone and asked for about $5. Which I thought was a fair price for 12 terrible pictures. Life was pretty chill in Tajikistan.
Digga, ist zu geil. Ey.
Every day we would go in the morning and apply for our permit, and every day they would have a new problem and ask us to come back tomorrow. On our 5th day we gave up and just drove back the way we came from. This must have been how Morten felt. The Pamir Highway is probably stupid anyway. On the way back we saw the snow cave and these 2 rivers with different colors merging, which looked really cool. As we came down from the mountains, we dreamed about how nice air condition would be in the car. After a night in Khujand, we drove to Kyrgyzstan. Ride-sharing seemed common around these parts. A couple of times local people stopped us and just got in. So we went along with these small side quests as a taxi service and drove people to their destinations.
Digga.
No worries, we...
Side quests nennt das.
A couple of times local people stopped us and just got in. So we went along with these small side quests as a taxi service and drove people to their destinations.
Side quests.
No worries, we did of course not take payment. After some driving we reached Oz, the so-called Great Silk Road Bazaar, an amazing city. Things were just a bit easier in Kyrgyzstan. Most Kyrgyz policemen we met didn't even ask for any money. Just leaving the car behind was of course not possible in most countries. So we had decided we would try to sell our car as scrap metal in Bishkek. At this point we were a couple of hours away from the Chinese border. And we're pretty satisfied with our adventure. And
Digga, übelst nice.
Decided just to drive straight to Bishkek. Suddenly the car started making a lot of noise, so we have to stop. I went under the car to check it out. Turns out this part was broken and hitting the wheel. So I began removing it, which took a bit of time. Anyway, while I was under the car, a lot of cows walked down the road. I didn't notice them until I got out and was shocked that a car was looking at me. Once we got to Bishkek, the project of selling the car began. First, we got it professionally cleaned. Most people we met in Kyrgyzstan didn't speak English, and we could not speak Kyrgyz or Russian. So we prepared a few key sentences on Google Translate. I began yelling my best, yet terrible attempt at the Russian sentences, and somehow attracted an audience pretty fast. Though I was trying to sell a car in a language I didn't speak, people were engaged and listening. I tried to say it was $200 and some guy asked if I meant 1200. Another gave an offer of $500. We were and some guy asked if I meant 1200. Another gave an offer of $500.
What the
We were afraid that we had not communicated clearly that it had not been imported. So we insisted on just $200, as we did not want to cheat anybody and have them be stuck with an expensive import process. Well, turns out they did understand and were well aware of how importing worked. So a lot were excited to buy it for just $200. We sold it to this guy. We actually asked him for a lift in our former car since we suddenly became pedestrians. Our last ride in the backseat of the amazing car. To be honest, we didn't really care if we could have gotten more money for it, as we had had months of incredible adventures in the car, and this way we were sure we didn't cause any problems for any of the locals. Thank you very much for watching.
Digga, was für ein Ehrenmann. Was für eine wunderbare, tolle Serie. 4 Teile haben wir jetzt davon gesehen. Gibt einem echt ein bisschen Fernweh jetzt in dieser Zeit. Es war ein absoluter Traum. Wirklich, checkt Spaghetti Road aus. Wenn euch das Video gefallen hat, lasst mir gerne ein Like da. Vergesst nicht, den Kanal zu abonnieren. Denn hier kommen tägliche Uploads. Macht's gut.